there's no momentum left to say, yes, I am. And the only thing he can say is, I am not, because he's completely lost his identity. He doesn't even know who he is anymore. But luckily, Jesus doesn't leave him in that place. There's one more passage we're going to look at. It's also in John, but we're going to look at chapter 21. Beginning in verse 15. Jesus has been raised from the dead. Peter's out with the other guys fishing, and Jesus shows up on the shore and he says, come on in. Peter recognizes him as Jesus, and he jumps off the boat and he swims into shore. Now, before I read this, you have to understand something here. Many of us enter into phases of prideful defiance. Many of us enter into those phases, and then we feel like we've gone too far and we don't want to come back to Jesus. Peter's gone to the depths. He's lost himself. He's lost his purpose. He's been distracted. He's given up on Jesus, apparently. But when he sees Jesus, he races to him as fast as he possibly can. And as a result, look at what Jesus does. When they'd finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you truly love me more than these? Yes, Lord, he said, you know that I love you. Jesus says, feed my lambs. He's giving him his purpose back. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you truly love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. Now, what you got to see so far is Jesus is using a Greek word called agape when he says truly love. And it doesn't really mean truly love as opposed to the other words for love. What it means is covenantal love, commitment no matter what. Jesus is using that word. He's using a word of commitment. Agape is a word of commitment. When two people get married, the kind of love they promise to each other is a commitment of agape. It's that kind of thing. Sickness, health, better, worse, that kind of stuff. It's a commitment kind of love. Jesus says, are you committed to me more than anything else? Is that the kind of love you have for me? And the word Peter is using is an affection word. He's using the word phileo, which means brotherly love. It's a word for affection. It still means love, but it's more of an affection kind of love. So Jesus says, are you committed to me more than anything else in the world? And Peter says, Jesus, I love you. I like you a whole lot. And Jesus says, are you committed to me more than anything else in the whole world? And Peter says, man, I like you a lot. And Jesus says, the third time, Jesus says, Simon, son of John, do you like me a lot? That's the word Jesus uses there. And Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, do you phileo me? Do you really like me? And he said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I really like you. Now, it's more than that. I'm exaggerating. Peter is saying love. He does love Jesus. But Jesus is asking him for this commitment thing. And Peter's so worried and concerned that he can't make that commitment, that he's just using the language of love. But Jesus doesn't care. Jesus takes it. And he says, feed my sheep. Just a little bit left here. Go down to verse 20. Peter turned and saw the disciple whom Jesus loved was following them. This was the one who'd leaned back against Jesus at the supper and had said, Lord, who's going to betray you? When Peter saw him, he asked, Lord, what about him? Jesus answered, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? You must follow me. Because Jesus had just told Peter that Peter is going to die one of these days. And Peter says, what about John? And Jesus says, what do you care about John? Don't be distracted. This is about you. You follow me. And so we come back a full circle, and here's where it lies down for us. I want you to have positive momentum in your life. I want you to begin to experience the kind of life that God designed you for. I want you to have that kind of life. And we can use these big words, and we can say prideful defiance dissolves you, but surrender to Christ develops you. We can say that. We can hear that. We can believe that. We can know that. But for you and me, it comes down to something that is daily a decision. It comes down to one big decision. And that one big decision is Jesus Lord? Because if He is, and He tells me I'm going to die, I don't need to ask about John. I'm just going to follow Him. Is He Lord? And the greater amount of intensity you can answer that question, yes, He's my Lord. Yes, I'm committed to Him. Yes, I love Him more than anything else. The higher the level of intensity you can answer that question, that's what determines everything else. That determines your purpose. That determines your trajectory. That determines what can distract you. It's how you answer that question. So today, I want to ask you very firmly, have you made that decision? And is it the most intense decision in your life? Does it rule and govern everything else? Does it hold charge over all your other decisions? Because we make lots of little decisions. But there's that one big decision that colors everything else. And if you don't get that one right, you'll be like Peter, floating up and down all the time. But if you get that one right, you'll be like Peter at the end of the story when he says to the Jewish council around him, judge for yourself, should I obey you or should I obey God? That's the kind of person I want you to be. And so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask you today to confirm that big decision in your life. Maybe you've never made the commitment of saying, Jesus is my Lord. And if you want to make that commitment today, I want you to take the card that you got in your bulletin and I want you to put a check mark on there saying, I want to know more about Jesus. I want to become a follower of Jesus. And then I want you to put another check mark on the I want to be baptized and I want to go public, letting people know how serious I am about this decision to be a follower of Jesus, to make Him my Lord. That's what I want you to do to make the one big decision. But some of you in here are thinking you're off the hook because you've already made that big decision. And so I'm going to ask you to do something that's a small decision. In fact, it's a small decision that you need to make every day this week. Could I have my welcome team go ahead and bring the baskets out? Because I'm going to ask you guys to do something kind of weird, kind of crazy here, okay? What I want you to do is I want you to think about that decision in your life that you keep making. Maybe it's a decision that is greedy. You're not giving God your first 10%. You know, He says 10%. That's nuts. If my bank check, if the check from my employer is cashed in my bank and it's cashed at $5,000, I expect the bank to take nothing. But God asks for $500. That seems like a lot. Well, maybe we're not doing that because we're greedy. I don't know. But what I want you to do is I want you to think about that decision, that one decision you're making in your life that says Jesus is just an advisor. He's not my Lord. Okay? Think of that one decision, that small decision you're making. Now, these baskets have some markers in them. And there aren't enough markers for the entire row, so you're going to have to use your marker and then share with the other people, pass them down the end of the row. But this is what I want you to do. I want you to think of that one decision, and we're going to have the band come up here in just a little bit, and we're going to play through a relatively long, reflective song. And I want you to take the moment to write your bad decision on the bottom of your shoe. And this week, you're going to walk it off. You're going to walk it off by making one good decision, saying, Jesus is my Lord, after another, until that bad decision gets completely walked off.